Hi, this is the Painting with Commentary video for Paint to Life episode 57. As you can hear, I have a bit of a hoarse voice right now, so it's going to be a little gravelly. I'll try not to talk as much as usual. Would you be so lucky? First up, here's the paints list for the paints we used for this episode. I don't know the paints that Beard Clipper used, but you can catch his episode at his channel and see. So this is the wooden tiki model he decided he was going to paint, and that was the inspiration he took when he painted it. So as he told me he was going to be painting it purple and neon, I was thinking, well, what am I going to do with this? And the idea of Spanish Conquistadors came to mind. I found these minis at Eureka Miniatures, an online web store. They're metal cast. They're pretty cool. And then I wanted to paint this and film it in a neon light, so you can see that's what a prime black one looked like. There's a different miniature, and then there's the sweet spot where it glows. You can see the fluorescents are glowing, but the mini just kind of looks blue, and that's what I was going to aim to do. So up front, Krieg Khaki is the under color that I used. It's very watery, and on the black it goes on very thin. I had to use multiple coats, and the priest had the biggest surface area to cover, as you can see. It's pretty transparent, but I didn't want to go with like your typical beige khaki for all of the cloth these guys wore. I wanted more of this, this color, so like minty greens, and I'll treat them later with other paints to give them more of a cloth look, and that's what I'm doing here. Another thing you'll hear, I'm sorry I sound terrible. Another thing you'll notice in this episode, I've zoomed in the camera quite a bit. I film in 4K with my phone, which lets me double the size of this zoom without losing any quality. I don't usually get in this close, so if it's uncomfortable for you, let me know in the comments. But I found it was important because the minis are so dang small. The details were small, and if I had kept it zoomed out at 100% zoom, this would be half the size it is right now. And because these minis have these little details on them I thought you might want to see, I blew it up, which I don't always do. Now, each one of them has a bit of quilt and padding, and they're all getting that Krieg Khaki treatment. Except for here, some of the under areas get a different color. It's not Krieg Khaki. It's a little, can't remember what color that was. It's, dang. So for the flesh, I'm using Night Quester flesh at first. All these look horrible when you just blop that on there. Look at it. It looks like a wax museum. But when the paint dries, it tightens up. And of course, you'll treat the paint later with some layering of some other flesh tones and some shaders on there. But for a base coat, which is what I'm doing first on these minis, just basing the khaki, basing that green, basing the face with Keystar flesh, basing their armor, which is coming next. When they're done, they'll be very one-dimensional and flat, but that's what I wanted to do first, I guess. I'm not the best painter, but I just do what works for me and what feels right, which is right now not talking. This was the model I decided was going to be Alvaro, the captain. It had the most detail on the armor, including these pauldron shoulders, which I was going to line with gold later. They had the nice helmet like the rest of them. And each of the minis, except the priest and the flag bearer, have bucklers. Their arms are posed in such a way that we can glue the bucklers on later. So again, talking sucks. Okay, on to the next Kislev flesh. Ooh, a little too much on that. A little too heavy-handed. Now, I look at that and I say, what did I even bother to paint the undercoat for? I just splashed that flesh right on top. Well, the truth is, I might have put a little too much on that, and also This paint is transparent. It will dry, and some of the areas of the night quest or whatever will come through, and the parts I'm not painting with flesh will stay darker. So backs of the hands, tops of the fingers, nose, eyebrows, chin, chest, bone, like that. That's better. It's a little too heavy-handed with the other ones. They're really small, and the metals it doesn't have the greatest details. They have beards as well, which will be painted on later. Orthor brown for shoes. Nothing special. Just like the bases of each one are just going to be gray later, because they're going on Beard Clipper's base that he made. You can use any kind of brown for the shoes, but because I was doing their hair and beards brown, I didn't want to have the same brown. I wanted it to be more of that chocolate pudding brown as opposed to the dark or brownie brown, poo brown, whatever. So we're almost done the feats. Boom. Now we're on to Lead Belcher. Lead Belcher, one of the metallic grays in the Citadel line. Great for armor. It's right in the middle of the dark and light scales of all their metallics. And I've said this before, but I always paint from the inside out. So I painted, you can see his quilt between his crotch there on the back side, like his, whatever that is, a cape, not a cape. Yeah. Same with the hands and the face. Now I'm on top for the armor. And there's some belt and utility belt, which we'll touch as well. I didn't know if the backs of the legs were supposed to be armored or if they had like pants on and they were just shin pads. But when I first did a test of the shins only, they looked stupid, like shin pads for soccer or something. So I did the whole leg in armor. So yeah. Morghast bone. This guy has like pantaloons, and I didn't want to do it khaki green like I did the priest, so I did use a beige for the pants here. Morghast bone. It's too bad. I meant to take a picture of them when they were all painted in their base before any layering or shaders or contrasts were put on there. They looked ridiculous. So keep that in mind. Oh yeah, and I did the Morghast bone on this Chet's hat as well. Just remember, when you're painting, it looks so bad as you're going along, but there's a greater purpose. You're working towards a goal, and as you paint up and add more details to it, it will become clear what that goal is. So Mornfang Brown is the color I chose to do the hair of the Conquistadors. Normally I'd use a couple different colors or some blacks and mix them, but they're so small. Look at, they got a little bit of, beard and mustache. One color's all I ended up using. And I thought about giving them different hair colors and beard colors, but it was a lot of extra work for probably no payoff. They're all the same Spanish, the same race, same time period, so I figured they'd all look very similar anyways. And also, the Kislev flesh that I put on the Night Quester flesh is very white like very Caucasian, and Spanish people are a little bit more olive tawny than that, so I'm using a Reclin flesh tone later to bring that color down. Stormhost Silver is the color I used for the blades, as well as detailing the armor, little teeny bevels and ridges and raised areas. I put a little coat of Stormhost Silver on. Man, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is killing me to record this. It doesn't hurt, I'm not sick, but I hate the sound of my voice when it's like this. Because, you know, I like to do fun voices, and obviously I talk a lot, so to be encumbered like this is quite frustrating. So I hope that you appreciate it and it's not driving you crazy. And if it is, I apologize. And if you don't appreciate it, well, you know, sorry as well. What else can I do? Alright, so now we're on to the utility belts. They had a couple baubles, some sheaths, daggers. I just used the same color here on all of it, and I touch it up later with 2 different colors for layering and for you know, to change it with a contrast paint. If you think about it, if these are like, they're not quite military, the Conquistadors were like more privateers, but they'd all be outfitted the same way. So why would they all have different scabbards and belts and stuff? Probably all same standard issue. So using the same color on all of them is probably not a cheat. It's like painting an army, which I don't use, which I've never done. Some of you might play Warhammer and paint armies, but to me, I like to change them up. This was fun. Apothecary white contrast on top of that khaki green that I put. I didn't know if it was going to work, I'll not lie. It's a weird combination. And I'm sorry my camera work wasn't the greatest here, but when it dries, the 2 colors complement each other really well. And it really does give a cloth feel in my mind that it otherwise wouldn't have. And I'm sorry I missed the placard of what color this is, but it looks like Zemsty Desert. So these quilts that these guys have, these quilted areas, I'm using just the high part to make it different than the low part. Just a little bit of this yellow kind of paint on top of that green, so that when I treat it later, and this guy's entirely doublet is made of quilt. So by putting it all on there, just the high parts, I don't want it to fall in the cracks. And when I treat it later with, I think it was Agrax Earthshade I'm going to use, it'll really make that look like a dirty cloth doublet. And the pantaloons have these cool lines, which I'm going to alternate stripes on next. Oh, I guess next. So Nazdrag Yellow is a contrast paint. You can see when applied to that Morghast bone, it gives a dirty cloth effect. And here's the Uriel Yellow for these alternating bands. I looked at some historical photos, yellow and red, green and white, purple and yellow. Were all kind of used in the time. So I made the soldiers have the yellow and red, and I made one of the lieutenants have the purple and yellow. He'll be coming up next. Here are all the yellows. Just gently brush the paint on, try not to force it down in the recesses. Evil Sons, Scarlet. You can see as I was putting it on here, I was starting to wonder, oh my, it's gonna look like Ronald McDonald, isn't it? But no, it doesn't. It holds up nice. And then the Gene Stealer purple on the shoulders with the yellow for this guy. He has those pantaloons that were Nazdrag yellowed. And then for our main boss, this Retributor armor. Oops. It's a metallic paint. Like I said, I'm detailing the trim around the edges of the armor with it. So it's kind of a gold and silver mix. as was the gilding on the armor at the time. Different colors of metal make it more ornamental to distinguish rank. Alright, Agrax Earthshade. So now, this is the wash that I'm using, not Nuln Oil. Nuln Oil would be too dark, too black. Earthshade is good because when I put it, I didn't put it on the yellow and red parts of the legs because I didn't want to make them dirty. I wanted them to stay bright. But all the quilting that I did everywhere, which was that khaki green and then the yellow on top, that needs some dirt in the seams. So by applying this Agrax Earthshade, making sure it doesn't pool too much, it's gonna really bring out the wear of the clothes. Now see how that contrast white dried onto the khaki on that priest? I thought it was a nice effect. So I'm basing these now with this gray, just to match the base. And Reikland Flesh Shade goes on top of the Kislev flesh to, one, highlight the eye sockets and the nose, and then also to darken it. And I'm also using Stormhost Silver, as I said, to touch up and kind of put a two-dimensional look onto the lead belcher shields and bucklers. I could have probably done those a little neater or something a little more creative, but I had 6 to paint in the same amount of time. I usually only paint 1 mini, so I took a few shortcuts. There were some tassels on articles of clothing and armor that I painted the same kind of yellow and reds that I used for the pantaloons, just like this headband here. Evil Sun Scarlet, give him a Rambo headband on this pole bearer or this spearman. Now it's time to Gorilla Glue the shields onto the Conquistadors. Simple. Metal or plastic works the same. Little dollop of glue, press and hold, 15 seconds and you're good. Alright, let's take a look at what Beard Clipper did. He sent me his footage. I'm just going to comment on what he's done. He mixed in some glow-in-the-dark pigment with this neon green paint that he used, which is why it glows later in the video when I turn the lights out. That's some XPS foam he used to build some stairs, and that is a sheet of clay he's rolled with a texture roller. He's going to glue the wet clay onto the XPS foam, trim it, and then paint and dry brush it. I never used clay before myself, but it's interesting. It's kind of a cool texture pattern. You can go visit his website or his YouTube channel and watch this video, his video of him in this project, if you want to know more. I've linked it here for you. It's also in the description below. So there he also uses like floor grout to build up, which is what he did down there. Those are little oofs made by Quinian, I think he said, his friend. And he's just putting on some black, just kind of basing that, priming it, but you can't use spray primer on XPS foam. And now he's got to cut the tiki off of the bubblegum mount, put it on his base that he did. You can see he made some homemade flocking there. Now let's look at the finished stuff, shall we? There are my 6 Conquistadors, and on Beard Clipper's base with the wooden tiki. Very cool. And now, of course, the neon colors and fluorescence that he used lended themselves extremely nicely to a UV flashlight, blacklight. When I kill the lights, that's the glow-in-the-dark pigment, that's pitch black. But in order to see the rest, I used the UV flashlight to cast that shadow of blue light, which makes the tiki glow as per the story in Paint to Life. And the minis, well, they just look like they're fighting in the dark. Thanks for putting up with my raspy voice today, guys. Thanks for watching Paint to Life. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next time.